I've talked a bit about Sister Geraldine up in Port Moresby and the little project we have of giving her funding for PPE for her staff. And I'll talk a bit more about Geraldine in another talk. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the other nurses I've met up there in Papua New Guinea. This is Mission Alive. You're with Roger from the MSC Mission Office. Some of the nurses that I've met out in the bush in Papua New Guinea are quite extraordinary as to what they do. I remember meeting a man and his wife. They were both nurses. He was more qualified. I was in Bush Rego and he was right up the top end at a place called Boku, and there was a sub-health centre up there. So he was in charge of it with his wife and maybe some other staff. So I got to know them a bit there. I went up there a couple of times, all the way up there, and said mass for them and whatnot. And then he moved on to somewhere else. And then when later, after some years, I went up to Tapini Parish, and he was up there, and he had become more qualified in medical administration, and he was running the sub-health centre up there. One day I went down there to the hospital to visit people and to see him, and there was a big crowd of people around, you know, the doorway looking into a room. So I went in, and there was this woman there. This is a bit gruesome. There was a woman there from way up in one of the top villages, and she'd been attacked by a young fellow. I think it might have been either a brother or son, and she was cut with a bush knife, with a machete, and I think it was on the thigh, and it was sort of sliced, and part of the thigh was hanging open. Nasty, nasty looking wound. And I didn't know what to think. Anyway, he was quite friendly, and he was there with swabbing the wound, cleaning the wound. And so we talked a bit. I said, that's pretty nasty. He said, oh yeah, this happened, that happened. And you know, I said, what are you going to do? He said, I mean, up there, I mean, that was it. It was the clinic. It was him. He wasn't qualified as a surgeon or anything, and he didn't have all the equipment and whatnot. It was just him. If he didn't do something, the wound would probably go gangrene and she'd lose a leg and probably die. And so I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to clean it, and then I'm going to sew it back layer by layer. And at that stage I wished him good luck and left. I think the woman, she recovered, and she's probably still walking around up there somewhere. But some of the nurses there like that, they have to go far beyond their training and have to use their own common sense, their skills and their knowledge to do things. It's quite extraordinary what they do. At that stage too, I was receiving, which we used to up there, from St. Vincent de Paul down here, we'd get a box of medicines. There were medicines left over from whatever their supply, and they said sometimes when the salespeople came around, they give them all these samples. So they'd box them all up, and this box contained all sorts of things: tablets, bandages, sticky tape, everything you could think of. And in some of them there was this little book called MIMS. Some of you might know it. MIMS, M-I-M-S. And it had all kinds of information about drugs. So I gave this to this fellow, and he was from Booker, this nurse, in Bougainville. And so I gave him this. I said, this might be interesting. And later he said, oh, that book is just so interesting. He says, I'm learning so much about drugs that I didn't know. And I thought, that's terrific, because he would be in a situation, he might have some drugs there, and the more he knew about how to use them and who he could give them to, etc., the better he would be in his profession. So there were some extraordinary stories up there about what these nurses do out in the bush, and I came across it in other places in the Solomon Islands and in other places, that these nurses out in the bush, they do far more. They are nurse, doctor, everything to people out there. And that's part of the mission. That's part of what happens. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your support.